Hey team, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to do some C# modeling of some simple to complex JSON objects. Let's begin. File, new project. We're going to do a Windows console app. Bam, 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 like it. And then we're going to move this thing up so I can click this button next. Then I'm not going to call it console app. I'm going to call it model.json. Then I'm going to hit create. And now because you know I'm doing JSON, you know I have to load JSON in my project. NuGet master. Okay, browse. There's a Newtonsoft right there. Alrighty. Click on this little JC. Hit install. Then say OK. OK. All right, so now our project has been set up to do that. Okay, this is example 1. Data is nice and simple. We have two fields, a CID, and that data type is integer. Entity name, it is a string. Now what do you need to know here? Well, you have to be able to look at the data type and know what it is. You have to know, hey, is this an array or just a scalar variable? Is this a string or a double? What kind of data type is this? So you need to know that. So when you look at this file, these are the field names. These are the values. So field value, that's the way that works. Now, just because you can type in some JSON, that doesn't mean it's valid. So before you start messing around with a bunch of programming, so notice what I did. I went out there, I took that same statement to a validator and it said, this is valid JSON. Now, the first thing you do is let's do that first variable. Public int CID get set. Our second variable was called entity name and it was a string. So public string entity name get set. Now these spellings have to be identical. You can't come over here and put a little n there and expect it to work. Now, you know that now. Don't make that error. That's a painful error and it can take a long time to debug that. So make sure you're smarter than that. Let's look at the next thing. So we've created our model. It's called my model. I use CID, Control C, make sure I spelled it right. Entity name, make sure I spelled it right. Then we're ready to go. Well, let's make a variable for that file name. String file name equals, what does my file name equal? Well, I know I don't want a bunch of slashes, so I'm going to say verbatim. So verbatim, quote, quote, single. So now I have to go figure out where that file is. So notice here I have that file. So right click on that. You see where it says copy full path. Okay, it's now on my clipboard. And now I'm just going to come here and paste that in there. Make sure I have my quote at the end. So start, end, it all looks good, right? Now, what do we have to do? We now have to, I just included all my Newtons. You saw when we started it up, I did a NuGet, made sure Newtonsoft is available. So now I'm going to say string JSON text equals file dot read all text. And what am I going to read? File name. Now I was able to do this because I included system IO. Now remember, this JSON that's on a file, I know that looks like something you want to call JSON, but it's really just a string, just an array of characters. That's all it is. It's special because we have put a lot of programming into this resource, but it is just a string. So don't get too hung up on, like what it is. So, and what it is to me is just a text file. I'm about to read it, but it's kind of a special text file. Now we're going to use that Newtonsoft and we're going to deserialize that JSON object into our C# object. So how do you do that? You say data, how about we say var? Var data equals newtonsoft.json .json convert .deserialize. Now, are we in the Deserialize object? Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. And what was the name of our object? Well, the name of our object was called my model. So copy that down. Let's put it in our program. And then guess what we're going to do here? Open, close. Come on. Open, close. And then see the name of this file? Control C, Control V. And we're done with our program. Let's run this and see how this works. Ready? Okay, team, let's run this little Jesse. I've done everything I could. Let's make sure it works. Ready? I'm going to F10 into this. Look at my file name. My file name went out there and it got me that full path. Notice I used the @ symbol before that, so I don't have to put all them extra backslashes. It's called verbatim. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that file name and I'm going to read it, and the contents of that is going to go into that JSON text. Let's do that, F10. Okay, done. Now look at JSON text. It's got all that JSON with all those backslash new lines and carriage returns. Hey, this is great. I love this. And then what it's going to do, it's going to take all these words and it's going to map them to the object that you just created, my model. That's what it's going to do. F10. Now let's bring in a debugger and let's verify what I just said. Okay, so we know we had a CID, a 750 as an integer. We know we had entity name, my company, as a string. We knew that. Now if I look at my model, notice CID, int, entity name, string, right? That's the value. And let's just go take a look, see at that JSON. Okay, so CID 750, entity name, a company name. So as you see, guys, this first one, very, very simple, but hopefully it built a skill for you. In our second example, the JSON is just going to get more complicated. So each example gets more complicated. So now you can imagine this right here. I come down and I say entity stock shares. And then I say, you know what? That is its own object. And then here, I'm going to give it some kind of label so I know what that means in the future. Remember, around all these things, we have to use the quotation marks. And we're going to say here, this is common stock that is outstanding. And we're going to put a little description on that. And we're going to say, this is the number of shares. Does that make sense? So we're making it a little bit more complicated. And these are common shares, and it's the number of shares that this person owns. Now notice here, this is another object of this guy. So we just have to do some modeling that makes all that make sense. We validated the object and it came back valid. So we just added a little bit more to our JSON. We went to a validator and it validated to be true. And now let's think for a moment. CID, entity name, CID value, entity stock shares. Is it like this? Line 3 and line 2? No, it's an object. So we can't continue this same model that we did here. We got to be a little bit more creative. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, think about if this was my object. And let's go ahead and create that object from scratch. So how would we do that? We would come down and we would say public class, and then let's call that entity stock shares, right? That is the name of my object. And it looked like we had two fields to it. And we're going to say public label. And then we're going to say, well, we got to say more than that. It'll be a rookie string. And then get and set, right? And then public string DESC get set. Now, a lot of people want to have typer casing here, but we're trying to solve a problem. And in our JSON, we have to call it what it is. If it's little case, upper cases, whatever it is, that is the variable name. We just have to deal with that. But notice here, my entity name, I want to use this name. So what I did is I begun this with a _e. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up to our base, and then I'm going to say public. What's my data type? Well, my data type's an object, entity, and then that again, but I'm going to take that off. Call that E. Because that is the way it was spelled, right? It was spelled that way. See how it's little e here? Well, little e here, little e here, little e here. I can't, change the spelling just because, I want to. Somebody should have thought about that when we modeled this JSON. But, this is what we have. So we're modeling what we have. So hopefully you can see that. You're starting to understand that. Now this is an object. It's not an array. It's an object. And let's go ahead and code this up. We have to continue here with get and set. And we are done modeling. Now you're probably thinking, what changes do we have to do here? Are you ready for this? None. We're going to deserialize that JSON, this through this into this. That's it. All right, let's do it. Ready? F10. F10 gets the ball rolling, compiled, a blue star. I got my file, got JSON. Let's see if we have all that extra stuff in there. You see all that extra stuff that we have done down there? F10. Do I have my entity stock shares? Yeah, I got it right there. Now guess what? I'm about to execute line 24. F10. I'm going to bring over a debugger. Data. Now look at our data. CID, entity name. Oh, there's our new object. Our object has got descend, description, and label. That's the way it works every time. 1, 2, 3. Let's do something more complicated now. In our third example, I wanted to introduce some arrays to make it just a little bit more complicated. And how did I do that? Well, notice that I added one more key to entity stock shares, and I called it units. And then I came down here and I said trades, but I said, ooh, let's make that an array. And inside the array, I have objects. So that would be called an array of objects. But that is under units. So what we have to do, like every other time, is we have to go out and validate that to see if this is even, good JSON. Let's see what happens. So I went out to a JSON validator and noticed that this website says this is valid JSON, as I assumed. Now here's where the magic begins. We now have to model all this new JSON. It's just not gonna show up in our object data. I mean, we got to do some modeling. That's what this video is all about, learning how to model. Let's see how I did that. Step 1. What did we do new here? Well, we added this thing called trade. Trade is an object, but it's an array of objects. Let's go and build up this trade. Let's go and build up this trade object. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say public class underscore trade. You know why I do that. And then, so what kind of fields do we have in here? Well, we have a account, date of trade, ticker, tran type, quantity, and cost per share. Sounds pretty easy. Now, What else do I have to know about this? Well, I should know that this looks like an integer, a date, a string, integer, and some decimal. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So what do we say here? We say public int ACCT get set. And so I don't have to type all this all over. And the second one was date of trade. The third one was ticker. The fourth one was tran type. The fifth one was quantity. And the sixth one was cost per share. And we got an int, that looks like a date time. The next one is a string, integer, and a decimal. So that's my object for that trades. Now, if I come back over and look at that, what are we dealing with here? So account, date of trade, ticker, tran type, quantity, and cost per share. Okay, cool. Now what I want to do is, it is possible that I've misspelled something, because that's the way it happens in real life. So I'm just going to copy these in here. And I'm going to do them all because it's always the one I don't do is the one I misspelled. Tran type. And then that quantity. And the last one was cost per share. Okay. All right, cool. So now that we have that all done, what do we do next? Well, let's take a look at that JSON again. See, that sits inside unit. Well, if we kind of are lost here and we can remember what we did for entity stock shares, isn't this word labeled just like trades? But this is an array of objects, but this was just a label and a string. But how did I do that? Well, let's go take a little look-see. Well, see how I took this up there and I called it that? So can I do the same thing for this guy? Can I bring it up? So let's see how I would do this right here. Ready? So underneath this guy, I'm going to make another class. And public class units. And then units has what? Units has public trades, has an array of trades. Trades get set, right? So what does this mean? So this is that class object, and this is an array of them. So I have an array of these. How do I know that? Well, this bracket here, open bracket, close bracket, this is an array. These are objects that sit inside this array, right? So I came out here and I said, okay, here's my trade, that object. Let's make an array of them. And let's call it trades. Well, that wasn't too hard. So what do we do next? Are we done? No, we've got to add it to this guy, right? We've got to add units here. So how do we do that? Very, very simple. We just come up here and we say public underscore units get set. So notice the way it comes down and it says this, it says SID entity stock unit. SID entity stock. Ooh, see an entity stock share? We're in that. We're underneath this now. This is units is a child of entity stock shares. That's why we put them here. Okay, well, talk is cheap. Let's see if I get this thing to work. Ready? F10. F10, and then bam, bam, bam. Show me the debugger. Debug, quick watch. All right, and that is called data. There you go, add watch. I've already got them in there. Let's delete that. Okay, so let's do this bottom one. So I got 750 a company, and then entity stock has a description and a label, and it also has a units, and that units has trades, and each of those trades have objects. And there you have that. Okay, so let's make it a little harder, okay? We're in our fourth and final JSON to C# modeling. This is a great learner here. One thing to point out, programs.cs, notice I have not changed this. This has not been a lesson about Newton Deserialize Object. This has been about modeling. And when we take JSON, we just need to model our C# objects to reflect how the data flows. Now, once again, my steps do not change. So I took all this JSON to a validator, 131 rows, and it came back as valid. So all of the data is good. So we have valid JSON. So that means I can write some C# programming. And notice that we've changed it quite a bit. I now have accounts. Accounts have different parts of the world, right? Let me see, we got Ecuador and Mexico. So it's very, very complex. This is pretty comprehensive. In fact, if you have some other JSON that needs some attention, just learn this one and then just baby step through your problem, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get it. So hopefully that's what I've taught you in this lesson about taking baby steps and solving problems. There's the JSON. Let's look to see how I modeled this. Notice I started off at the top, CID and entity name, and then I have this thing called accounts. Let's take a look at that. So CID, entity, and then accounts. And then notice accounts, umbrella, goes to the top to the bottom. And then in each of the sections, each country, we have, a state. So what I did is I came down here and I created another class called World Investor. And then I gave it to USA, Slovakia, Ecuador, and Mexico. So this one class object here is now pointing at the 4 countries. Now notice that entity stock shares points at this class, and this one points at unit, and unit points at trade. So altogether, look at that, it's just 50 lines of code of class objects that solve this problem. Now this is a pretty comprehensive JSON object, but it's not hard. It's comprehensive, but you should be able to get this. So take your time and look at this code, the way it just drills down, and just take your time when you're developing a model, okay? I want you to know that of all of the source code here, the only one that I'm going to put out on the drive so you can download it is example number 4. This is the most comprehensive. So you will get models.cs, program.cs, and the JSON. So you're going to get all 4 of these, so you don't have to retype this stuff. Okay? All right, so let's start here with our program. Let's do a breakpoint on line 24, and let's see what happens. So it's compiling, it just built it, and now I'm going to do an F10, and then let's look at this data. Do we got a debugger? Debug, quick watch. Okay, and the thing is called a data add. And notice here, so it goes account, then accounts have Ecuador, Mexico, Slovakia, and USA. And then notice USA has all the way down to their trades. Okay, that's USA. Slovakia has all the way down to their trades. And let's see, Mexico has all the way down to its one trade. And then Ecuador is null. What does this mean? Well, you know exactly what that means. It is not configured correctly. Let's go find the error. Okay, so I'm going to stop this mess right here. Do you want to stop? Close? Stop? Now what we're going to do here is go into our model. And let's look to see what we did with this Ecuador. Ecuador, and it's a world investor. And then I have to go look at the JSON. Ecuador, did Ecuador get spelled correctly? Ooh, there it was. I had transposed the U and the A. Let's run this again. You see, something as simple as not following steps will put you in a headlock. Ready, F10. Now let's pull over our debug window and notice data, accounts. Oh, look at Ecuador. Oh, Ecuador's got data now. Oh, so everything does work if you do it right. Look at that. They got two Banco, I can't even pronounce that word, and I'm not going to try. So notice we were able to do it. Now, I didn't follow my steps about making sure that I typed everything correctly. And you saw what kind of error it makes. So take your time when you're modeling, because modeling is everything. Okay, team, that's all I have. Hope you learned something.